Erevis Cale is a rogue who grew up on the nasty streets of Westgate, but after running away from his gang life there, he fled across the Sea of Falling Stars to Saga in Symbia. There, his life took a drastic turn, since he was chosen by the Shadow Lord, Mask, God of Thieves, to be his priest. Hello and welcome everyone to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himvar. Today, I'll be telling you why you should be reading the Erevis Cale saga by Kemp. The Legend of Erevis Cale, as I like to call it, is a saga of dark fantasy novels with some heroic themes thrown in that take place in the Dungeons & Dragons setting of Forgotten Realms. The characters' actions and plot are all superb. Our main character, Erevis Cale, commonly called just Cale, is a very human figure, living his life in darkness both figuratively and literally. At the start of the series, he is the butler for the Uppbeat merchant house in Saga. His background as a thief is unknown, of course, to the lord and lady at Uppbeat. He rules the servants of the home with a stern grip, and he even has a crush on the Uppbeat's daughter's Thazing, known as Tazzy. Though she doesn't reciprocate these feelings, she is also a sneak thief like Cale. Throughout the series, Cale transforms, going from being a simple thief of the streets, with care for a simpler life, to a powerful figure affecting the cosmology of the world and even battling gods. Our other characters include Jack, a halfling priest of Brandobaris, the halfling god of rogues, and even though he may be a thief, he is a really good guy, and he's really the positive, the light side of a relationship between him and Cale. We also have Drastic Riven, whose character develops a lot throughout the series and his role changes quite a bit. But initially he is a one-eyed assassin working for the Zentrum. Magadan Kess is a tiefling, which is immortal with fiendish blood. And in this case, he is the son of Mephistopheles, the Lord of Cania. He is a psionicist, or commonly referred to as a mind mage. His character struggles a lot with his heritage, and later in the series he struggles a lot with addiction. We also have Abelard Corinthal, who is from Serb in Symbia. He is a priest of Lathander, god of the dawn. He isn't introduced until the second trilogy, but he is a great character, and it's interesting to see his development as he walks the line between the shadow of his life and the light of his god. This series is, I would describe this series as definitely cynical, and it gets progressively so. There's definitely some light in the shadows with some of these characters, especially Jack and the followers of Lathander. Lots of bad things happen in this book, and not always to the characters, but sometimes by the characters themselves. In fact, I've read several series set in the Forgotten Realms, and this is by far the darkest I've read so far. In fact, a few times the events even disturbed me a bit. The series has powerful mages, shades, undead, dragons, demons, devils, shapeshifters, gods fighting and dying, and political intrigue. And I would even say Kemp's ability to write action rivals that of R.I. Salvatore, who's known for his Drizzt series, also another Forgotten Realms series. We get plenty of duels in this series, but eventually, more so in the second series, we get armies even facing off. Armies of humans versus humans, aided by priests and wizards. We also have armies of devils and undead and other dark beings. The series has a lot of heart to it, and I'm being really brief with my comments, but this series is actually one of the few that has got me teary-eyed and even made me cry a couple times, which is kind of a mark I use to let you know that I am someone who cries when I'm reading books. And so even though there's a lot of darkness in this series, there's a lot of good stuff in this series as well, and it really shines when contrasted. Because our characters struggle a lot, like all the time basically. They go through some pretty bad stuff. It's really terrible actually. And I would say the opening to Shadowbred is one of the best I've ever read. It was phenomenal. Now I do want to go over the books real quick in this series, and I'm just going to start with the main entries and then go on to some secondary short stories that you can also add. So I have all of the works here essentially. So the first story that you really want to get introduced to Cale with is the story Resurrection, which is in this anthology, The Halls of Stormmother. So this anthology introduced characters for the Symbia series. So this is book one of the Symbia series. This is the reprints with artwork by Raymond Swanland. Each character got a short introduction in this anthology, and then there was a novel diving more into those characters. So the story Resurrection here talks about Erevis Cale, and then book 2, Shadow's Witness, is the first book, full book, talking about Erevis Cale. So that is part of the Symbia series, which is a great series. I would recommend anyone who wants an introduction to the Forgotten Realms, but if you want to continue from there, or even if you want to skip it, Erevis Cale gets his introduction there. This is when he gets his calling to be a priest of the Shadow Lord, but then we go into a story that's completely focused on him. In fact, it's a trilogy called the Erevis Cale Trilogy, which we have book 1, Twilight Falling, Book 2, Dawn of Night, and Book 3, Midnight's Mask. The series deals a lot with personal challenges with our characters. It is a very personal series. It's very small scale when you compare it to the second trilogy. We get a lot of shapeshifters in this one, and we do get character death, okay? That's not something that Kemp shies away from. People do die in this series. The second series is more focused on the return of the ancient Netherese Empire as they seek to consolidate Sembia under their shadow. And that is called the Twilight War series. And this one, again, is 3 books. The first one being Shadowbred, the second one being Shadow Storm, and the third being Shadow Realm. This is a great series again. This one's fantastic. In fact, if you didn't want to commit to all these books, the author himself recommends just start with the Twilight War. You'll get the background pretty well of the characters, and you'll get the bigger picture and a bigger story, really. This one involves a lot of more moving parts. This one you also get more chapters from the point of view of the enemy and other characters. Now there is a sequel that was originally supposed to be a trilogy to the Twilight War, but it got truncated and shortened to 1 book because Wizards of the Coast decided to, well, end their novel line, which I think is a big mistake. But anyways, that's a different topic. This became book 2 in the Sundering, which are books you don't have to read at all, so don't worry about that. And that is The Godborn. So this one's a little longer than normal since it was him trying to fit the story that he originally had planned into 1 book. But this one takes place actually 100 years after the Twilight War trilogy. So a lot of stuff has happened since then, and it's a nice continuation of Cale's story. So there are also some short stories that I want to mention real quick. So this one is only found in a magazine. It's called All the Sinner Saints. It's found in Dragon Magazine 277, which is, here's my copy right here. This is his origin story of his escape from Westgate and as Cale attempts to leave the Night Mask gang. And then in Dragon Magazine 297, we have the story All the Sinner Saints. This was later included in the omnibus Erevis Cale, which also had a Raymond Swanland cover made for it. I do not have a copy. This is what it looks like right here. This story takes place in between the first and second trilogies and is a short piece that deals with Cale and Jurassic Ribbon. So then we have 2 other short stories. Now these are included in other books, other anthologies to be specific, set in the Forgotten Realms. So the first one is The Realms of the Dragon, specifically Volume 1. We have the short story Soulbound. This takes place after Dawn of Night, which is book 2 of the Erevis Cale trilogy. Really not a necessary read, but if you wanted more. And then along similar lines, this one in the Realms of War anthology called Continuum takes place after Shadow Storm, book 2 of the Twilight War trilogy. Again, not a necessary read. You'll get the pieces of it in Shadow Realm, but it does give you some nice touches, some nice background on one of the plots that is going on in the book. I often found this series to be very quotable, and I wanted to read some quotes that stood out to me as I was reading the series. These are pulled from all of these books. He existed in the nexus of light and shadow, a creature of both, but a servant of only one. Ages turn, the work changes, but there is always horror. The air itself is an enemy. Where are you going? To kill a god. How can you not feel awe as you watch a son die? Today is a new day. Cale and Riven might be separated by only a blade's edge, but that edge was keen and clear. Cale showed mercy, Riven did not. And then my favorite. If we get the chance, let's be heroes. Now, I did review all of these over on my blog, and I will link the reviews for those down below. But I think especially from that last quote, we get a powerful lesson that Kemp tries to teach us with this series. And that even though you're far from perfect, and a lot of times you're not even good, you can still be a hero. Now, hero has several definitions, but this actually hits multiple. And now that is my recommendation for people who want to get into Forgotten Realms, anyone who likes dark fantasy, and really just a good read overall. This is something they're really short novels, easy to get into, and I think they should be appreciated more. And I mean, as far as Dungeons & Dragons novels go anyways, they are relatively popular, but I think still underrated. So let me know if you've ever read this series, if you've heard of this series, if you plan on reading it. If you want any more Forgotten Realms suggestions, I can gladly give you more. I've written articles about it on my blog, and I will also link the author's own page about his suggested reading order, which is what I shared, if you want to be able to read the article rather than have to go back and watch this video again. Well, hopefully this is going well enough. I feel like I'm totally butchering it this time around, but again, I'm still new to this. Anyways, thanks for watching. This has been Liam with Liam's Lyceum. I'll see you next time.